And we just start with your name.
Okay. I'm Bruce King Jr.
Bruce Jr. What company were you with in
I was
3-5?
with India,
Okay.
3-5, 1st Marine Division.
And where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Buffalo, New York.
And how'd you join the Marine Corps?
That was a story in itself. I had a friend of mine. He was in the Marine ROTC, and he screwed up, and they were going to throw him out of the ROTC.
Yeah.
And of course, being 19 years old at the time, 18, 19 years old, we were out drinking and having a good time. And Saturday morning, he had to go see the recruiter. And in Buffalo, New York, the only recruiter that was open was the Marine recruiter. Well, my buddy was in talking with the Marine recruiter, trying to stay on ROTC. Lo and behold, of course, I was hungover and not feeling the best ever. And this wonderful Marine recruiter comes out and offers me a cup of coffee, like a gift from the gods. And I said, what a wonderful guy. And about 5 minutes, so I'm out there in the hallway, and so about 5 minutes later, the recruiter comes out again. He has a dozen donuts with him. Young man, would you like a donut to go with your coffee? I said, what a wonderful person. So he said, well, come into my office.
Yeah.
Said the spider to the fly. But so I went in there and I joined what they called the inactive reserves. And so for that whole summer, I goofed around. Every week, the recruiter would call me up and ask me when I'm coming into his Marine Corps. And I kept saying next week, next week, next week. Well, lo and behold, I get a letter from the President of the United States. It said, greetings. You are hereby ordered to report to Fort Dix, New Jersey. And I go, I've been drafted in the Marine Corps or into the Army. I wanted to go in the Marine Corps. So I called up my Marine recruiter and explained to him what had happened. And he said, well, do you still want to be a Marine? I said, well, yeah, I might as well. And he said, well, all you have to do is enlist one day prior to your induction notice. I said, piece of cake. Okay, well, when I enlisted, instead of going for 2 years, I went for 3. And I always liked the Marine Corps dress blues. Always liked the all the esprit de corps about the Marine Corps. And I grew up in the projects. I was kind of a tough kid, and I thought I was real tough. And I got in the Marine Corps and found out, well, not as tough as I thought.
Yeah.
And that's basically how I got into the Marine Corps.
Okay. How was boot camp?
Actually, to be honest, I was a little disappointed because I heard so many stories about boot camp. I thought it'd be a little harder than it was. It was interesting, but I thought it just would be more difficult.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed boot camp. I had all these drill instructors that watched over me very carefully. I had somebody to put me to sleep, somebody to wake me up. They took me to breakfast, lunch, and supper, and what a wonderful place this is. And they all cared about me.
Yeah. So then how'd you wind up in 3-5?
That's an interesting story. I went to ITR, Camp Lejeune, and after ITR, my orders were Westpac. This is 1967, early 67. I left for, they sent me out to Camp Pendleton. And when I got to Camp Pendleton, there was about 400 of us. And what they did, they had us line up on the grinder, the parade deck.
Yeah.
And what happened, they were calling names off. They said, 350 of you are over here and 50 of you over here. Well, I was one of the elite 50 over here. And then they made the announcement, you 50 are permanent personnel. You 350 will be in Vietnam in 20 days. Well, wait a minute. I've been trained to a razor's edge. I'm all set to go do my duty.
Yeah.
So I'll switch with somebody. I want to go to Vietnam. Well, the Marine Corps, being a Marine Corps, said, no, you cannot do that. You're permanent personnel. Well, so they assigned me to the 28th Marines at Camp Pendleton. And the genius that I was, every month I volunteered to go to Vietnam. Well, evidently I did it one too many months. So about a year later, my first sergeant calls me in. He said, King, you got your wish. You're going to leave for Vietnam in 20 days. You know, First Sergeant, I kind of like Southern California. I changed my mind. And I'm laughing with him. And he says, it doesn't work that way. And then what happened, they sent me to, I had some jungle training and that the Marine Corps gives you. And then they sent me to, I flew out of El Toro. And then we landed in Hawaii, refueled, and then we landed in Okinawa. And there they gave us our wonderful hemoglobin shot and a few other shots and stuff. And then they sent us to, and I went to Da Nang. We landed in Da Nang on a commercial aircraft. And I expected to see the war go on and everything. We get off the plane, it's bright and sunny, beautiful day. The stewardess gets off, the rest of the crew gets off, and they're taking pictures of us as we're coming down the ramp. And I'm going, well, maybe they landed in the wrong spot. I don't know. This isn't too bad. You know, Vietnam, no, it's a piece of cake. And then from the aircraft, from the field net, then they moved us to a staging area. And then they decided where they're going to send us in Vietnam. Well, at the Da Nang area. I was already in I Corps. I was already in the 1st Marine Division. It's just where in the 1st Marine Division. And I had a sergeant that was assigning us this. And the young Marine that was ahead of me, his last name was pronounced Quezon. And back in the 60s, in 67 or 68, Quezon was kind of a bad area. And the sergeant's laughing. And so he sent this young Marine to Quezon. And I get up there and he says, you're going to Phu Bai. And I looked at him, I said, my last name's King. Why the hell are you sending me to Phu Bai?
Yeah.
And he get out of here. And then at Phu Bai, I was assigned to the India company at the 3-5 3rd Battalion 5th Marines.
And what was it like getting to India company? Like, how were you treated, and kind of what was your first day or two like?
Well, I was kind of like the brand new guy. Mm-hmm. And one of the first people I met in India was a Sergeant Wolf, Sergeant Tom Wolf. He was our platoon sergeant. And Sergeant Wolf, he was the most scary individual on this planet. He had one eyebrow, and it went right across his whole forehead, right across his eyes, which was real thick, real dark.
Yeah.
And he had a handlebar mustache. So if you could put this together with a typical Marine platoon sergeant, that was all business. He was scary. That was my first real impression of India in 3-5.
Yeah. How was he? So he was like scary in garrison. How was he in the field?
Fantastic. He was, you really couldn't ask for a better leader.
Yeah.
He was quite the individual. His job was to take care of every man in his platoon, and whatever he could do to help, any information, he was like a big brother almost. A very strict big brother, but like a big brother.
Yeah. And of course knew the job inside and out, I assume. Like,
well, it was an interesting time. I had the first time I got to go on a patrol, Sergeant Wolf, we're going on a night patrol. Sergeant Wolf came up to me, he says, jump. I said, what? And he made a few adjectives at me and told me to jump. Well, I jumped, and I had a lot of junk on my uniform and stuff, and I kind of rattled and made some noise. Well, everything was dear and precious to me, he grabbed and threw away off my uniform and told me to jump again.
Yeah.
And of course, I made no noise because all my beloved stuff was thrown away. He said, now you can go on patrol.
And it's like something silly, but it had a purpose. Obviously, you know.
He didn't want me making any noise or anything like that.
And I guess you learned, like, well, I better do what he says when he says it.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
And then later on, I got about a week later, I got a chance to walk point. And being the enthusiastic young Marine and not paying attention to it I should have done, I got out there and pitter, patter, pitter this way, pitter, patter, that way, and did it again and again and again. And I turned around and I looked, and I'm in the middle of this open field all by my lonesome. And said, this isn't the best idea in the world. Very cautiously, I went back to where I was, and the squad I was with, they're all underneath trees, resting, taking a break. The squad leader looked at me. He smiled. He said, "You learn anything?" Mm-hmm. Okay, King. A little while later, he got pointed again. I'd take 2 steps, turn around. Take 2 more steps, turn around.
Who's your squad leader at that time?
I honestly don't remember.
And where was the India company?
We were up in an area that I thought was the Haivan Pass. The area was between Da Nang and Hue City, up in the mountains.
Okay.
And it turns out that we had our base camp there.
Yeah.
And we ran numerous patrols and stuff. And I learned a whole lot about the real being in the jungle. And fortunately, where we were at, we didn't have a lot of activity. There was some sniper fire, booby traps. We didn't have any at that time. We had no major engagements.
What was your first combat in Vietnam?
Well, by combat, we had sniper fire, booby traps, and that. That's hard to really say what was the first one.
Yeah.
We'd go out on a patrol, and the enemy would shoot at us. We shoot at them, and it was a lot of cat and mouse kind of thing.
A lot of VC in that.
All that we ever saw were NVA.
Oh, really?
And those were some very disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
I respect the hell out of them. They were good fighters, very good fighters, and they'd go toe to toe with us.
And did you stay in that area the whole time, or did you guys wind up moving to do some?
No, actually, we stayed there till about May, and then we moved south for the summer ops. But when we were up there, it was kind of interesting. We had a base camp, and at our base camp, we actually had a small mess hall, and in the small mess hall, we had a walk-in cooler, and we would get mortared every so often. And not to sound casual about it, but you'd almost expect to get mortared. Well, one night we got mortared, and the only casualty, they hit that walk-in cooler and killed our walk-in cooler. So no more refrigeration for our food. And the mess sergeant was a pretty civic-minded young man. And we had a lot of eggs in there, dozens and dozens and dozens of eggs. And this mess sergeant took all those eggs and gave them to Papa San outside our gate. I don't know how many dozen, but there was quite a few. Papa San thanked us, bowed, and was very polite about it. And down he goes from the mountain. 2 days later, Papa San's back up on that mountain, selling us hard-boiled eggs 2 for $1. You know, that stuck in my mind. I always thought that was pretty cool. But going back to what you asked, around May, we left that area, and we went south for the summer ops. And we played around in the different valleys, Antenna Valley, Elephant Valley. There was different areas we were in. At the time, I knew the name of the area, but now that's all kind of fogged up. I don't remember exactly where. Eventually, I became a platoon radio operator. And it was a very interesting time. We were on an operation, and I guess I did some pretty good things. Because right after the operation, I got promoted to corporal, but nobody told me. It was nobody ever mentioned a word about me getting promoted. And I was supposed to go to Okinawa to NCO school. That's all they told me. They didn't say I was going to be promoted. They just said, you're going to NCO school. Ironically, the young Marine that replaced me as platoon radio operator was killed 2 days later. He was just sitting around talking, and a mortar round hit on the operation they were on, and he didn't make it. And we would go on numerous operations. We'd sweep an area and stuff, and they had names for all this, but it didn't make any difference. They said, go out, we go out. Well, we're on an operation. Well, that's cool, but we didn't pay any attention.
And this was, I guess, summer of 1968?
Yes.
Okay.
Spring, summer. Mm-hmm. And then I was back in Fubai waiting to go to Okinawa to NCO school like I was supposed to go. And we had this gunnery sergeant come out, and he said, Kane, grab your gear, you're moving out. I said, yeah, I'm going to Okinawa. This is going to be fun. I heard a lot of good stories about Okinawa. We won't go there, but I heard a lot of really good stories. Well, the gunnery sergeant, he said, no, he said, you're going back out in the field. No, Gunny, you misunderstand. I'm going to Okinawa. And he says, "You misunderstand. You're going back out in the field and you got 5 minutes to get on the bird. Get the hell out of here." And I said, "Well, the best laid plans, this isn't good."
Yeah.
And I spent the whole day trying to catch up to my company. I was on a couple of birds. I was on a personnel carrier. And then late that evening, I finally caught up with our company. And that night, we were on another sweep when I caught up to the company, and we lost. We had one guy that was killed. He was walking point, and I was third in the line of march. We were walking point, and he got shot in the side and the arm, and during the night he just didn't make it.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, now somebody else had replaced me as radio operator. So guess who got point first thing in the morning for the company?
You.
And wait a minute, I started off 100 days ago walking point. Now, here it is 100 days later. Oh, and between that time, I was there 5 weeks when the Marine behind me were on a patrol, and the Marine behind me stepped on a booby trap. That's when I got my first Purple Heart.
How did you get shrapnel?
I have shrapnel on the back of my head, my shoulder, and a little bit in my back. It really wasn't too bad. Like concussion.
Yeah.
They sent me back in the rear for 3 days, and I was recuperating.
And you said you were only in country 5 weeks.
5 weeks. I got the first heart.
In India or in your platoon, was it normally the new guys who walked point, or the senior guys, or it was just whoever?
It was the whim of the platoon sergeant or your squad leader, or just how it happened to go. We also had a few times we'd get a new guy that would come in. Okay, now I'd been walking point. I knew how to do it. I was a little more senior. So I would walk point to show the guy how to do it and don't make the mistakes I made when I first tried it, and explain things like you turn around and look. And although you'd been trained that, it's another thing when you're actually out in the field. So everybody kind of took turns walking point. It wasn't any one person was designated point.
Yeah.
So it would vary.
But here you were 100 days in, back on point.
Right where I started from. Here we go again. Well, that morning they started off, "King, you got point for the company, for the whole company," which is, I don't know, maybe it was an honor or what, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we started off that morning, and we got periodic sniper fire, and I'm going where they said to go. And so we started off on our merry little journey. And during the journey, I walked across a few punji pits and stuff. And the NVA were sneaky. They'd let you see a punji pit. Well, you could see, oh yeah, I can see that. And then real carefully, they'd hide another punji pit just off to the side. So you go to walk around one, and you'd walk right dead into the other. Yeah. Well, being in country for over 100 days and being a more senior Marine, we might say, it turned out that I could easily spot the different booby traps and stuff like that. Yeah. So we walked around all day like that.
And how big and deep? I mean, I guess it varies, but like how deep would they dig those punji pits?
About 2 to 3 feet deep.
And it would be sharp bamboo.
Yep. And they would crap on them and pee on them, and so not only did you get stuck with it, it hurt like hell, but you probably wind up getting pretty badly infected. So it definitely was something you did not want to do. If you could avoid it, you definitely wanted to do it. And you're on a higher alert when you're walking point. You're watching for everything and that. And so that went on all day long. And periodically you get a snipe around once in a while. I don't mean to sound callous about it, but sometimes, I mean, it's just the way it was, just the nature of the beast. Mm-hmm. And then it got interesting. And then it was 6:30 that evening. I was walking point, and I came up to a little clearing. And the back of the hair on the back of my head stood up. And I said, ooh, it just didn't feel right. My sixth sense kicked in. And I told the other Marines behind me, well, stay back, hold back. Let me go up there and see what the heck's up there. I said, it doesn't feel right. And it was like a path, and it just didn't feel right. And I walked up, and I come around like a little bend with the grass and everything else like that, and there's 3 NVA soldiers standing there. And they were just talking. They weren't ambushing me. They weren't trying to shoot me. They were just on a break, like just talking. And as I come around the corner, I looked at them, they looked at me, and for a split second, you could see all 4 of us go, "Oh, shit." And then my training and my instincts instantly kicked in. At first, a microsecond, my brain said, "This isn't real. This isn't really happening to me right now." But all the training and all my instincts kicked in, and I opened up fire on the 3 of them. And I saw 2. They got hit, and you could see them fall back. You could see the rounds hit them and stuff like that. The 3rd one, I don't know if I got him or not. And then it got really interesting. I tried to get down, and when I went to get to the ground and get out of there, it felt like I floated to the ground. And when I was firing, I could see the rounds, my rounds as they're being chambered out on the side of they looked like they tumbled real slow. Everything went to slow motion. Have you ever watched the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? Mm-hmm. Remember the part where they were in the ambush and everything went super slow? That happens. Your adrenaline is going so fast, everything goes super slow. And so I got down, and I got backed up, and then I was trying to get back. I probably had 100, 200 feet to get back to the guys. And as I went to get back to the guys, I was zigging and zagging, and I zigged when I should have zagged. And I got shot in the leg. And then I experienced the most anger I've ever had in my life. I couldn't believe, I mean, I know I'm in a war zone and I know all this stuff, but somebody actually shot me. I mean, if they shoot you, I feel bad for you, but they shot me. And I was livid. I didn't care about the leg. All I was going to do was kill something. And that's not a Marine thing. That's just being pissed off. They shot me. And then after that, it's kind of foggy, but I was told that for like 5 or 10 minutes, I had my own little personal war going on. I was able to get my pack off me. I had my pack and a pack board. I got that off in front of me, and I'm shooting at the enemy. They're shooting at me. I'm shooting at the enemy. They're shooting at me. So the brilliant idea I had, well, I'll throw a grenade. So I throw a grenade. And the damn enemy threw one back at me. And it actually blew me back because I was behind the pack board.
Yeah. And
I threw another grenade. They threw another grenade. And I started to think, maybe if I stop throwing grenades, they'll stop throwing them. And then it got a little blurry. And eventually the rest of the platoon came up and they engaged the enemy in that. And they were able to rescue me. But before that, the corpsman came up. And he was the first one up there. I told him, get the hell out of here. This is not good. And he came up, and it was interesting. And under heavy fire, he came up and worked on me. And right then and there, I realized the real heroes, it wasn't us Marines. It was it was the corpsman that came up. And he worked on me. Fortunately, he didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
But what happened, they were able to drag me back and that. But the point I'm trying to make is that here, it was real ugly when I got shot. And here this corpsman comes running up.
Yeah.
And he stopped the bleeding. Of course, I was shot up. My leg was blown open. And here this corpsman came up. There's your heroes.
Yeah. You remember who the corpsman was?
I do. He comes to our reunion.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just know him as Doc.
Yeah.
His real name is Richard. Oh, I even have his card at home.
Yeah.
And at the reunion here, he is not at this reunion or the last one, but he would always say, "How's the leg?" I said, "It's fine." He said, "I did good work." And we joke about that.
Yeah. But he was it's crazy that he made it to you ahead of your own
He
squad
first
and
went up.
platoon. Yeah,
And I didn't call for him. In fact, I told him to stay back.
yeah. So were you evacuated that day, or did you have to spend the night?
That night, I was evacuated about an hour later, and unfortunately, what happened, I found out years later when I came to the battalion reunion. That night, they called artillery in, and it killed our captain, Captain Kilikowski, and it killed several other officers. And the only officer that was left alive was Lieutenant Campbell. And Lieutenant Campbell later on was shot and killed.
Wow.
And that night, I think we lost four or five Marines were killed. And then years later at my reunion, I found out that at the time our company engaged, when I was walking point, our company was down to about 130, I think 100, 135 Marines. A normal Marine company with attachments is 250. I don't remember us ever being anywhere as near full strength the whole time I was there. And our radio operator, platoon or company radio operator, said later on, 3 days later, only 17 guys walked out. And we were in an area south of Da Nang called Golno Island. And for years, I was always told I was shot on Golno Island, which is kind of cool because it's got an Oriental name to it. Well, I never made it to Golno Island. I made it to what they call Football Island, which is adjacent to it. And I tell the story, well, where were you shot at? Well, in the leg. No, what part? We're in the country. Football Island. You know, it takes all the Gono is really cool, Gonoi, but football.
Yeah. Have the reunions helped? Or, like, have they been beneficial to you?
Well, yes. First, I have to explain, when I went to Vietnam, I was an old man. I was 21. And when I was in Vietnam, I made it a point not to get real friendly with everybody, because if you're my friend and you get killed, that weakens me. So I tried to be the tough guy. So I didn't get close to too many guys. And at the reunion, I only knew 2 or 3 guys here that I had actually served with. And unfortunately, they've all passed away.
Wow.
But I've still made many, many, many friends here. And by coming to the reunion, a lot of the gaps that I had forgotten or information that I had been misled, they were able to straighten it out. A good point, I always thought I was in the 1st platoon in India. Well, the company radio operator had a book, and it showed me in 3rd platoon, and he had me written in the book. I was in the 3rd platoon, which is kind of cool. It's just a minor fact, but it was. Yeah. I found that interesting.
Actually, the last Marine I talked to said that the reunions fill in the puzzle pieces to a lot of stories and memories.
It's like watching a newsreel, and you're watching a newsreel, and then you get 5 minutes of emptiness. And then you watch the newsreel for another 5 minutes, and then another 2 minutes of emptiness. Well, this helps me fill in a lot of the blanks.
Yeah.
I still remember quite a bit of it. So coming here is really good, and and it's nice to see the guys, and it's wonderful as I've gotten older, because we come and tell our war stories, the same stories we told at the last reunion, but we're old. So we forgot them, and they're all new stories.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Well, is there anything else? I don't want to take too much time.
Okay, one more thing, though. If it wasn't for the service, because when I was a kid, I worked in Bethlehem Steel.
Okay, yeah.
So I had a great job there. Yeah, I would have got back in there, and I would have never gone to college, because I was making great money working before I went into service. So I would have never gone to college. If I hadn't gone into service and hadn't gotten hurt and had another GI Bill to go to school, I'd have never wound up with the degrees I have. And the degrees that was able to prove to my employers I was trainable. So it worked out. Things have worked out really good. I've been very fortunate. I have a fantastic wife. She gave me a daughter first and then a son. She's been my rock. She's been super good.
Yeah.
It wasn't for her, I don't think I'd be here, to tell you the truth. And so I've been very lucky. I have a great family. Last year, my wife and I, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. And to be married to a former Marine is not the easiest job in the world. So I give her all the credit in the world. She's been phenomenal. And her name is Patty King.
Yes. Perfect. So yeah, I don't want to rush you. I want to make sure we get you to the raffle.
Wow.
But, and just to wrap it up, I shot in the leg, and I assume you're evacuated, and that was the end of your time in Vietnam.
They evacuated me. Well, I woke up they medevac me that night, and I went to Hill 55. They worked on me there, and then from there they took me to the Da Nang Naval Hospital. And then the next morning I woke up, and I'm in a white bed with white sheets on in an air-conditioned room, and there's no pain. I'm super comfortable, and I look around and holy shit, I died. I thought I went to heaven.
That's how good air conditioning was in Vietnam.
Well, I didn't have too much air conditioning.
That's what I mean. Like,
yeah.
That to have air conditioning, you thought you were in heaven.
Yeah. So it was, and then it took 2 or 3 days for me to stabilize me, and then they put me on a plane and flew me to Japan. And on the way to Japan, when the plane took off, they had our heads facing backwards, and the acceleration from the plane, the thrust in that, the blood kind of rushed your head, and I didn't feel so good. And I asked the most beautiful nurse I ever saw in my life. She had round eyes. Yeah. And I asked her, could I have something for the discomfort, for the pain? And I'm thinking aspirin. Well, she comes back, rubs my arm, gives me a shot, and the next thing I know, I'm landing in Japan. I had no idea what she gave me, but
she's like, I'm not dealing with this guy anymore.
I was out.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking with me. I appreciate it.
Chris, it was my pleasure. I hope whoever sees this, maybe
we talk some good. We talk leadership and good NCOs, and the importance of reunions and connection, and the importance of using your benefits and the GI Bill.
Yeah.
So I think we covered some.
One more thing I want to point out: in Vietnam, the enemy, the NVA, were not bad people, and they were wonderful. They were fantastic soldiers, and they weren't my personal enemy. What it was, we chose up sides. I was on the Marine Corps U.S. side. They were on the North Vietnamese side. They weren't mad at me. I wasn't mad at them. I mean, there was some anger. You felt anger because you see your friend get. But personally, I wasn't. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. We were both just doing the job. The guy who shot me, he didn't know me, and he wasn't mad at me. But it was business. It wasn't personal. And I had a gunnery sergeant explain that to me. And that stuck with me my whole life. When I went from union to management, I had to deal with some people that were challenging. Mm-hmm. And in the back of my mind, I always remember what the gunnery sergeant said. This is business. It's not personal. So when you're out doing your job and somebody is really less than nice, always in the back of my mind, this is business. It's not because they don't like you or they know. It's business. It's not personal.
Wow, that's a really mature. I don't know if that gunny served in Korea and maybe World War II, but that's a really mature way to look at it.
One more thing, and then I'll be done.
No,
one more thing.
I'll sit here all day.
Count to 5 on your hand, and you use your fingers and your thumb, right?
Yeah. When
I was in Vietnam, I had a little 8-year-old boy teach me how to count. Okay. 8 years old.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, this little boy counted the joints in his hand. And he counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and the hand is 15. Now you had your hand your whole life. I've had my hand my whole life. And I can count to 15, and there's some tricks you can do with that. But I can count to 15 on one hand. If I'd known that when I was in grade school, I would have had to take my socks and shoes off. And I guess that's it.
That's if you'll go to grade school, rewrite the curriculum in elementary school. Yeah. So, well, I appreciate it. Thank you for sitting with me. So this was awesome. So
you probably want your microphone.